In today's video, let's talk about the latest Steam Machine and Steam Deck update that adds a lot of cool features. And after that, we got even more Steam Frame updates. It really looks like this thing is right around the corner. How's it going? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I can see my forehead in the monitor. I got to go out on my friend's boat yesterday, which was awesome, but I had sunscreen on, by the way. I got so sunburned. My thighs, my chest, my forehead, like you could see where I had the sunscreen on, here. I don't know why I didn't put it on my forehead, the thing that's in direct sunlight, but I learned my lesson. Anyway, thanks so much for the strong reception to my Steam Machine review. I worked really hard on that video, filming all these different games and trying to find the perfect settings. So to see people genuinely excited to watch it and give it some of the best view duration I've ever had on this channel just really means a lot. And for all the new people here, if you want to see more great videos like that, subscribe, set your notifications to all. But let's get into the first news story here and talk about how Valve has been hard at work updating both the Steam Machine and the Steam Deck. So the first big update has to do with the Steam Machine and its verification system, which is honestly getting a lot better. I think it's still kind of a mess on the Steam Deck, and I think they've just kind of moved on. Like they might overhaul it with the release of the Steam Deck 2 or something and just leave it alone as is. But it looks like with both the Steam Machine, regular Steam OS, and the Steam Frame, they're putting a lot more effort into making sure games actually perform well before they give them that bright green check mark on the Steam store. And the way you find it is a little bit easy or a little bit difficult depending on where you're doing it. On the Steam Machine, you just go to the actual game, tab over to game info, and you'll see the verification status right there with all of the reasons why it was or wasn't verified. And if you're not on the Steam Machine, you just go to the Steam store, scroll down to the verification status and click learn more. And then you can tab through the different columns. So it starts with Steam Deck, it goes over to Steam OS, then it's Steam Machine, and then I think Steam Frame is there, but if it's not, it will be soon. And on its launch day, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced did get full verification. So if you read through it, it says all functionality in the game is working on default controller configs. The UI will display relevant Steam controller icons. The game's default graphic configuration performs well on Steam Machine. And then it lets you know that it's stuff full of DRM because it doesn't use the full Ubisoft launcher, but the launcher does show up when you boot the game. It has to load once. I didn't have to log into it, so it seems like the same half measure of a launcher that we've been getting in recent Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed Shadows or the Rogue Prince of Persia, but I'll take that. I'd prefer if no launcher was there, but not having to log in every time or have a game break because the full Ubisoft launcher got an update that doesn't work on Linux. We're getting there. It's baby steps, step in the right direction. And I will say it is very promising that, one of the first big verified games on the Steam Machine actually deserves to be verified, because if you didn't see my Steam Machine review, I extensively tested this game, and the way I did it was starting with the PS5 settings. If you haven't looked this up, the PS5 has performance, balanced, and quality. Performance is 1080p 60, balanced is 1440p 40 with I think some light ray tracing turned on, and quality is 30 FPS with all of the bells and whistles at the basically medium preset with a few high things like textures and stuff like that. Regardless, I set it at first to 1440p high 30 with FSR 4 set to quality, and it was running just fine, but I ended up buying a new TV. They were on sale. I got the LG B5, so not a really expensive OLED, just like the entry level OLED. Absolutely love it because it has 4 HDMI ports that support full 120 Hertz. So once I got that all set up, I kept the high preset, dropped FSR 4 to balanced, and then set it to 40 FPS, and it's been a basically locked 40 FPS all the way across the board. Some of the cutscenes will fluctuate between 39 and 42 for some reason, but other than that, it's basically running the same as it does on the PS5 using mostly higher settings than the PS5 is using. So yeah, it's promising to see that one of the first big games to come out for the Steam Machine or around the launch of the Steam Machine, because it's on other platforms like a general PC, deserves to be verified and was verified as such. What really matters, of course, is if this continues to be a trend and isn't just a one-off experience, but just based on my testing where every game I threw at this thing ran absolutely fine, and I tested some demanding games like John Carpenter's Toxic Commando and of course Dying Like the Beast, and it was running just fine. I don't foresee there being issues for at least a few years down the line, and it really does help that everyone is hating on Sony right now and does not plan on buying a PS6 because A, they're switching over to Steam. Like 45% of the people who were polled on Push Squared said they were switching over to PC, which is awesome. And B, if no one's upgrading to the PlayStation 6, the PS5 is going to stick around for a long time and stay the de facto benchmark target for every game going forward, which means we'll get some longevity out of the Steam Machine. And also Valve said The upgrade cycle is going to be much shorter on the Steam machine than it is for Steam Deck because they don't have to wait for that, Goldilocks chip to come out that they can use in a handheld. They can just use off the shelf parts and just keep it in a small form factor. So anyway you slice it, I think despite the rocky-ish launch with, the pricing situation and everything like that, we're kind of like getting out of the terminal velocity downward that this thing kind of had for the first couple of weeks. Just based on the reception of my video alone, I'm going to be honest, I was impressed with how happy people were to see the performance. So I'm really happy with the direction we're heading in. I hope that the number one goal Valve has is figuring out some sort of way to lower the price just a little bit. I don't expect them to make it $500. I don't think that was ever on the cards, but if they could get closer to that target of $750 that they initially had, I mean, that's only going to help the situation. But it's selling out like crazy. So it's going to be a while before it really ultimately matters. But if I paid $1,500 for the 2 terabyte and I think it's worth it, I think that's a good sign for the overall platform as a whole. One thing I'm definitely going to look at in a future video is how it interacts with the Steam Deck, because I just have this dream of setting up some sort of emulation and getting, the exact experience that I had on the Wii U, because yes, I was one of the morons who bought the Wii U, and it does seem like Valve is thinking of how these devices can work together, and of course the community will figure it out. There's a huge spider right there. I'm going to just hit. Okay, I got it. But anyway, getting back on track here, the update actually allows you to limit games to 59.94 FPS, which is interesting because TVs, when they're running at 60 hertz, are actually running at 59.94. So if you've got your Steam machine at your desk or you have a beefy PC and you're streaming it to your TV to a Steam Deck plugged into a dock or something like that, if you're streaming it at 60, you'll have a ghost frame every 17 seconds that lets it all catch up, which causes a stutter and makes the game have weird input lag. So now that they have this frame limiting update in place, if you're streaming to your TV, you can actually lock it to the hertz of most TVs out there and it'll look nice and silky smooth. So yeah, overall, I love these new features coming, and I hope you get your reservation email soon and you're able to order the Steam machine, because A, that will make people who are on the reservation list happy, and B, that gets people on the wait list even closer to being able to order their own Steam machine. And yeah, I also hope some wizard out there kind of alters the timeline and makes RAM cheaper so they can make more Steam machines and lower the price so we can get back to the awesome world we lived in back in 2022. But that brings me to the second half of today's video, which is that Valve looks like they're really ready to launch the Steam Frame. We know this one's already out there with developers, like developers are uploading gameplay footage of their actual VR games. They sent out the dev kits at the end of last year, but I'm not sure if any YouTubers were able to get their hands on the Steam Frame, and if it's anything like the Steam machine, they're going to have a very limited list of who they actually send it out to. But with that being said, there were two big updates over the past weekend. The first one, the Steam machine, which is already out, does not have, which is a great on frame section on Steam. They should add that, obviously, for the Steam machine. Like, we should see the top 100 most played games on the Steam machine. We should see a great on Steam machine section. I'm sure they're just collecting more data from the games people are playing and they will launch it. But, the fact that the Steam Frame has one before the Steam machine is a little weird, but the fact that it does have it means that this thing is, pretty close. And at first it was just a few Valve games like Portal 2, for example, but as the weekend went on, more and more third-party games started to get added to the list, so that's good. And clearly it's just pulling verified games. So as developers get their Steam Frame games verified, that will populate more and more over time. And speaking of verification, they did alter the rules to get verified on the Steam Frame specifically for 2D games, so like a normal game, not a VR game, because of Portal 2. So the way it used to work before, one of the bullet points was that you had to be able to run at the resolution of the Steam Frame, which is 2096 by 2096, so a perfectly square image, and Portal 2 couldn't do that. So they went back and altered the rules for 2D games that they don't have to run at the actual maxed out resolution of the Steam Frame. They can run in a window floating in an environment in 16 by 9, so like 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720. I'm sure it also supports 16 by 10, so that would be 1280 by 800 and 1920 by 1200. I'm not actually sure what 16 by 10 would be for 1080p. I'm sure you guys will let me know. But yeah, I'm glad that they're doing this and keeping the flat game library in mind, because that's obviously going to expand the launch library of the Steam Frame. There are a ton of VR games on Steam, obviously, and a lot of them will definitely get updated to work with the Frame, which is good, but there's not a lot of them on the horizon right now. And a lot of developers, like for Moss and Arizona Sunshine, they're porting their games to flat. So for someone like me who's had a VR headset since the Oculus Quest 1 and upgraded to the 2, then the 3. I've played the vast majority of the really good VR games out there, like Metro Awakening, Half-Life Alyx, Boneworks, Bone Labs. Like, I've hit most of the heavy hitters. So like, while it is cool and I am excited to buy one, I'm also excited to see where the future goes. And part of this thing actually selling well, I think, is the illusion, or, you know, the presentation that it has a massive library of supported games on launch. And the easiest way for Valve to do that is to kind of get the news out there that you can play flat games on this, because it is running straight up SteamOS, and they're doing all that work with the translation layer for Android to Linux and blah, blah, blah. And it's weird because the idea of playing VR games on this is obviously exciting, but the idea of playing my Steam library and using the same SD card that I move between my ROG Xbox Ally X and my Steam machine, and being able to just move it over to the Steam frame as well, it creates this like cool ecosystem that all works together. And I just think that's awesome. I'm really curious to see what the price is going to be on this one, but I think it'll be more palatable to people if it's expensive, because everyone's just kind of on board with the fact that, you know, making a VR headset with a battery and 2 very high resolution screens, pass-through cameras that track your hands, 2 extra controllers, and everything else that comes along with VR makes it a little bit to a lot more expensive to produce than something like the Steam Machine or the Steam Deck. So like, in my head, the audience for the Steam Machine, the Steam Frame, and the Steam Deck are all small-ish, but also very loud, right? Like, you know, you want it, you buy it, you really use the hell out of it. And that's kind of like the best sort of audience you can have for a product these days, because when you have one that sells hundreds of millions of units like the PS5, you end up in situations like the one we're in right now over there, where Sony's like, yeah, we're going to lose a lot of our hardcore fans by ditching physical games, but it doesn't matter because we are the de facto console. So I like this niche middle ground where there's a small group of people compared to the amount of people on PlayStation, but they're not small objectively, and they actually use the hardware to play video games, because that's what it's all about. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.